Good evening. It is Thursday night. It is 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and it is the ASTV Thursday night podcast with Trevor tonight. Trevor, how are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Nice to come on to one of these things with positive things to talk about.
Yes, we have good things to talk about this week, and then looking ahead to the next few games as well. No, Jamie, so there's no 60-second news, but we will get straight into it, I believe. Not before saying hello to our old mucker, Brian. But let's get on to our first topic for tonight, which is one in, one out. It almost seems like we've got Jota back. We've got Diaz apparently running, Van Dijk apparently running. And then we see today that Calvin Ramsey, whoever he is, the mystery man, has had a knee operation. So it's really, it never rains with a pause with Liverpool this season with injuries, does it, Trevor?
Yeah, that should be a shirt. Calvin Ramsey doesn't exist. And yeah, it's almost as if we have an injury quota for the year. As soon as somebody comes back healthy, it's just a necessary evil for somebody to go out injured. It's the way we balance the karmic energy of the club right now. You can't have too many good things. As soon as you get positives back, you have to just strike down somebody else. And Ramsey was even though he doesn't exist, he was the recipient of that bad end of it this time.
I wonder if we have the treatment table on some sort of timeshare or lease, or they're trying to get their money's worth out of it. But even still, we're not going to really talk more about the injury situation so much, because we've gone over that time and time again this year. Yeah. But we're going to talk more about Calvin Ramsey, and that he is a mystery man. I remember there was a little bit of a buzz about him when he came to the club, and yet we haven't seen hide nor hair of him. And in the Discord channel, which everybody should be signed up to, somebody mentioned Mark Gonzalez Mark II, and it's kind of getting like that, isn't it? We've got all this promise and all this almost public relations bump about him, but we're never going to see him by the looks of things.
Yeah, and there was all those times where Trent was really struggling, and we were just throwing every single person under the sun into that right back hole, even if it was kind of something that was very ill-fitting. And it was just, if he's not going to play against Rangers, he's never going to play. Then it was, if he's not going to play against the insert lesser club here, he's never going to play. And then just all of these mystery injuries would come up. Yeah, and the same week he'd play for the youth teams, and he'd score or he'd get an assist, and you're like, all right, so he's injured to play for the big club, but he's not injured enough to play for the youth teams. There was no consistency with it. And now that he's getting this operation, he's going to be on the shelf for potentially a couple months at the most. Hell, he could come back next week. With him, there's zero wherewithal, like, just what you hear doesn't mean anything because he doesn't exist.
In one sense, it almost reminds me a little bit of Rob Jones, except for Rob Jones actually got to play. We actually got to see how good Rob Jones was way back in the 90s. And it was a crying shame, literally one of the saddest days when we kind of realised he was never going to come back to be the player that he was after that ankle injury. But we haven't seen Calvin Ramsey yet to be that sad. It's almost like you can't miss what you've never had. We just don't know what we're going to get with Calvin Ramsey, do we?
Yeah, and it's kind of like a baseball prospect. You hype it up over and over and over again. You're like, oh man, look what this kid's doing. at such and such a level, and then he gets to the majors, and you're going, oh, this was the person. So I'm hoping it's not that. I because what I saw of him when he was at Aberdeen, there was time I only saw a couple games because you catch that Celtic or Rangers runoff when there's like a stream that comes through with when you're over somebody's house, and it's like, oh well, look at this kid, we bought him, yada yada yada, and it's it's one of those things where I don't necessarily think he's like a bust at this point. I think that's way too early and way too harsh. But I kind of just want to have him on the back burner at this point. And so when he finally is healthy enough to come in and be a contributor, it's a clean slate because now there's been all this hype and expectations, even for kind of a small money signing, because he was supposed to be that Trent cover. He was supposed to be cup game right back, penciled in regardless. And then that entire plan, through whatever means it was, just completely got dashed. And now we're just sitting here with a blank scouting report of what to expect from the kid. And I think that blank slate is truly what he needs when he finally is here, instead of us kind of just lumping up a year's worth of potential and speculation.
It's kind of in a sense, as you say, we brought him in to be that cover for Trent, and Trent at times maybe at least mentally probably desperately needed that replacement. But it says something almost that in the times that Calvin Ramsey was maybe available, that we would put the kit man in almost before we put Calvin Ramsey in. Does that suggest, do you think, that maybe there's something more going on behind the scenes, more than just injuries, that maybe his attitude is wrong, or maybe he's not coping with the pressure enough, or is it just sheer horrible bad luck for the kid?
And those are the inferences that we as fans just make out of necessity because there's no information. It's just, oh, he's not available. Why is he not available? He played a week ago and scored, and he didn't limp off injured. There was no reports of him suffering an injury in training. How is he now just a corpse come game day? How did we get from point A to point B? There's nothing about the story in between, and there either has to be some sort of disconnect between him and somebody on the coaching staff, or that Klopp saw something in training that he didn't like, or there's just a lack of pliability with the kid. Maybe he was asked to, I don't know, play a role where he wasn't comfortable with and just kind of took himself out of the equation, where there's things in the system that are very just demanding. And if he just was super honest about it and go, hey, coach, I don't think I'm ready to take on this responsibility yet. Yeah, I know you brought me in to do a job, but I want to do the best job I can. I don't think I can do that for you yet. Maybe that bit of self-reflection is in play, but that's all it is we're just throwing darts because we don't know.
Are there shades of the Naby Keita situation with this, do you think, where, we've known Keita when he hasn't been injured, when he's been available, he still hasn't been played, and with no rhyme or reason to it. Do you think that's just Klopp's way? He just keeps his cards so close to his chest that we're left to speculate? Or is there something where, let's get our weekly, let's not bash Brendan Rodgers thing in, but he has shown, like Brendan Rodgers has shown a propensity over his career to blank players who maybe just maybe didn't press the ball enough, or they missed a pass or something, and that's them out of the team. We've never got that impression from Klopp. There's no rumors about it, but do you think that maybe there is something about Klopp that if he just sees something he doesn't like, that's it, that's the end?
And it may not even be Klopp as that kind of just autonomous figure, because there's a lot of people who have opinions that matter on the coaching staff. And if it's something where, and yeah, I think Naby is an even more perplexing one than Ramsey, because there's been lots of, especially when it was talking about him getting transferred, his injury status was kind of just front page news, because it was, all right, we can't move Naby this week because he's hurt. We can't talk about Naby moving to Germany this week because he hasn't returned to training yet. That was all super spelled out. So when there was none of that and he still wasn't playing, you're going, okay, they can't use the injury as an excuse anymore, because every time he was injured, they shoved it down our throats and like, no, he's not playing because he's hurt, and he's hurt with this, and it's a grade 2 such and such with this, that, and the other thing. And it was very drawn out and very just over explained. Even with Ramsey, it's just like you said from the start, he's a mystery man. There's no rhyme or reason to it. He'll play, he'll be available to be on a match day roster, and he'll get replaced by some kid who hasn't played for the youth team in like 3 weeks, and you're going, huh? What sense does that make? And yeah, maybe there is some just underlying Klopp favoritism, where if you've fucked him over in his head in one way or the other, he's just kind of have you on his shit list for the remainder of your time there, and you'll never be able to figure out what you did because he won't tell you. That's got to be frustrating from the player's end, but even more from our end to an extent, because you sit there and you try to piece all the puzzle pieces together, and you have no edges.
I wonder if does Klopp have a teenage daughter or a late teenage daughter, perhaps, and something happened there, or did he walk into the dressing room after a training session and mock the heavy metal music that Klopp was playing or something like that? It could be anything as petty as that sometimes with those high-strung professionals. But let's move on from Calvin Ramsey and the one in, one out, and we'll talk about this Two's company. I know the Monday lads talked about the Everton game in detail, but we're gonna go even more specific into the detail, and that is that when you look at how we played on, first of all, because this is our first time talking about on the Thursday podcast. That was a phenomenal performance overall against Everton. I thought it was almost back to the old ways. It was fierce. It was intense. It was the pressing was there for a change. We talked a lot about in previous weeks about Thiago and his effect on the dynamism of the midfield, and without him there, it looked a completely different beast. And back four did a great job. I mean, it's Everton, but still. They have a puncher's chance every week, but they did their job. But more importantly, the front players, as we see there, we have the four at the back. We have the three in midfield: Bajetic, Fabinho, and Henderson, and then Gakpo dropping in with Nunez and Salah wide. I mean, Brian makes a good point. We did play a lot more direct. There was less of the tippy-tappy pass and possession football. But at the same time, we caused Everton problems that we hadn't been causing teams for a long, long time, haven't we?
Yeah, and that was kind of refreshing to see. Get the ball to Nunez and Mo early and then let them work instead of having to make 9 sideways passes and then hope that they can shake 3 defenders by the time that they've all closed them down. It was very refreshing to kind of just see that, get the ball and go. And as much as we love Thiago, his biggest flaw in the Liverpool system is his deliberate nature with the ball, where he always has to pick that perfect pass. He always has to find that run and see it and then make that pass instead of just going, okay, I have a little bit of just foresight where, okay, I know this guy, if I get this here, is going to run here and just see if I can get it to that spot. He was always trying to get it to the spot that he wanted instead of the spot where the recipient wanted almost. And I think Henderson and Bacetic to a point too is a guy that it's not that he's scared to have the ball, it's that he just knows that the people ahead of him can do more with it than him. So he just wants to get rid of it the second he gets it. He wants to just kill whoever has the ball, and if he's able to come up with it afterwards, just get his head up and get the ball out. And it's a distinct change from the Thiago Henderson combo where you always had that like kind of seesaw, whereas Henderson always wants to get rid of it. Thiago wants to hold it. And if you have two guys that aren't on the same page, that kind of mucks up the works a bit.
In terms of Gakpo and his positioning, it was almost Firmino like, and he dropped in, he helped out in midfield, and he was the genuine link between the rest of the team and the two forwards. But because he was dropping in, it created space in the Everton midfield and with the defenders, which meant Núñez, who should have had a goal, really. I mean, he deserved one before he came off the field, but he caused even more chaos than usual. But also, do you think that on the evidence of that game, for a change, Salah was causing chaos as well, which he hasn't seemed to have been doing for a long time.
Yeah, I think that first half for Mo was such a big confidence boost because even when he's had good games, they were always this season. They've always been slow starts where he's had to kind of ramp up into getting into the old Mo form. Whereas in this one, Connor Cody was looking like a man ready to go to the electric chair in like the 8th minute. That he was just shitting himself with Núñez and Mo coming at him from both directions because that there was nothing that he could do. Like, yeah, Tarkowski had a couple times where he'd come out and try to just do that kamikaze tackle and just get the ball out of play. But if you have so much open space with Gakpo pulling people around, that's just an easy layoff. And then you just have Cody on an island. And yeah, we saw how that went a couple times.
If we look at the diagram again, what strikes me as well is that with Henderson there, with Fabinho doing a proper sitting job, and with Bacetic having all like the energy of youth, so to speak, Trent was able to do his job like we know he can do his job because Henderson would cover him. And Bacetic, as I said, he covered Robertson. He pushed up and he supported Núñez and he supported Gakpo and he overlapped Gakpo. That was a nice sign for the future that maybe after all of our chit chat and talk and pontifications on the podcasts, that maybe there is actually a plan. Or do you think that was just a matter of circumstance and we're not going to see this again for a long time?
I hope it's not the latter. I hope it's something where you kind of take this big match in terms of just the local flavor of it and use these things that will improve your team in the future against a struggling opponent and work out some of the kinks and all of the stuff that we've talked about in terms of player usage in that one graphic that you showed up is everything that we've spoken about, having that midfield cover for the fullbacks to get forward, having Darwin and Mo pretty much up front with that Bobby Gakpo being able to kind of draw some of the heat back and give them more room to operate. I really hope it's not just because it was Everton and it gives us a bit more to look forward to in both the Newcastle and Madrid coming up, because it's two teams that we could really, really work that system against effectively.
We'll get on to Newcastle and Madrid in a moment, but it was really pleasing to see Gakpo score his first Liverpool goal against Everton of all teams. But it certainly looked like if we could keep this plan going, if he's almost a rotation stroke long-term replacement for Firmino, the attack is in reasonably good shape, because he really came into his own, so to speak, without any rude jokes this week.
Yeah.
He really came into his own in this game. I mean, it's an easy game for players to get lost in, isn't it? The Everton-Liverpool derby. But he actually stood out, didn't he?
Yeah, because it is a game that you can really just get pulled into the mud, and that it's something that Everton was trying at various points of the game to just kind of slow it down to a just LA traffic type of pace, and it just wasn't working. We weren't letting them kind of slam on the brakes like that. And for a guy like Gakpo that needs to kind of just constantly be moving, to have it not slow down to that part where he would kind of just, like you say, get lost in the shuffle, where there's too much congestion and he wouldn't be able to kind of do what we brought him in to do. And the fact that that didn't happen, obviously, and that he was able to get a goal as well, is huge for both his confidence and his development as that kind of that fourth guy. Because I still, in the latter parts of the season, when Bobby's back healthy, I think he's that guy that just provides that perfect fulcrum for Darwin and Mo to go get their stuff, just because there's that familiarity with Mo, and I think he's kind of worked together with Darwin in just those couple of games where they played full 90s together. There's enough there from just me as from the watching standpoint, that I'm okay with that. Whereas Gakpo, I think, still provides that just cover everywhere. And if in the long term he is kind of Bobby 2.0, that's even better.
Moving on a little bit now from that game, we're going to head in a different way than it has been in recent years. Around about this point of the season, in pretty much recent years, we would be able to say every game is important, but mainly because we were chasing the league or the Champions League or a League Cup or an FA Cup or multiple trophies at the same time. But this year, this season, it's every game is important because we're playing catch up. So there's no easy games for us for the rest of the season. So in terms of how we're just talked about how good that trio looked going forward. Nunez, Gakpo, and Mo. But we also had Jota back on the field, which was a great thing to see. A tough game to come back into, but yet again didn't do anything that we wouldn't expect of him. He looked like he was just not sharp, like as any player back from injury would look. But he knew what he was doing. Do we stick with the three that did so well in that first half against Everton, knowing that we have Newcastle and then Madrid coming up one after the other, or do we rotate with Jota back? What do you think?
I think the first leg in Madrid is where we're going to see a lot of the reintroductions. I think Newcastle is something where everything clicked so well against Everton. You have to just run it back for this one, just to see if there is that kind of, you can put down that tracing paper and see if you can just do it again. I really hope this, and it's very contradictory to past statements I've made on these shows of, yeah, for these things you have to kind of bring in these new players and you need to kind of rotate and do all this. This is the one time where I kind of want that stagnancy. I want to see I want to see it run back. I want to not have a change to the 11 and see if they can just replicate what they did against a better team.
In terms of the difference in the level of opponent, we knew what to expect with Everton. Quality wise, they're terrible. Like Frank Lampard has ruined whatever goodness they had in that team. But Sean Dyche, he's not one for the elegant football, but he does have teams that are organised and that will fight for everything. I think we saw, if we take the Liverpool spectacles out, we saw shades of that. And as much as I hate to say, I think they're probably going to just barely scrape back out of the relegation zone by the end of the season, as much as I would love to see them go into the Championship. But Dyche knows what he's doing in that kind of situation. But Newcastle, I mean, they were flying high all season. They're kind of still flying high. Maybe signs that they might be heading for a stall, much like Arsenal. They're getting into that period of the season where battles are won and lost. They'll definitely give us a better match. But do you think that we're probably catching them at the right time with the players we're getting back in and the settlement of Nunez and Gakpo? Or is this going to be, are we looking at another 4-3 thriller? Are we looking at a game that we're just not going to know who's going to win until injury time?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be that, because Newcastle has had just as much trouble as Everton has in scoring. But they are just as defensively sound. They got Pope, who has been having the season of his life in the Newcastle net. I'm not thinking it's going to be a very entertaining for the neutral type of match, just because Eddie Howe's another one of those guys, especially now that he has the talent to do so. If he's going into a game and within like 15 minutes, he can tell if he has what it takes on the day or if he just needs to shut it down. And where there's been times watching Newcastle this year where you almost see him kind of like signal to Shar where it's done. And then you just see 60 to 70 minutes of the drabbest football humanly possible. They're trying to just play keep away and then kick the ball 47 yards into the stands. They're not even trying to like play it forward. It's rough. Even with the talent that they have up front, none of it can stay healthy consistently. So they just kind of resort to almost, Dychean tactics of we're going to just be compact. We're not going to give you any opportunities. If you get in a good spot, we're just going to clatter the fuck out of you. And if you're gonna beat us, you're gonna have to beat one of the top 3 goalkeepers in the league with a worldie, and that's been their motto.
In terms of the defense of this, there was always that kind of connection between Howe and Eddie Howe. He was a very good coach, and Graham Potter, he was also a very good coach. But that step up almost seems to have brought out the defensiveness of both of those coaches that we probably, it wasn't always obvious before to at least the media and the, like, let's say the casual soccer fan. But they always had those tendencies, and you just don't notice them when they're at Brighton or at Bournemouth because they're on the defense pretty much every week anyway, because they're playing against better teams. But at Newcastle, he had that. I mean, he's had that nice run of games, but now, as you say, that you can tell within 15 minutes whether they're going to shut the game down or try and play face up. Is it vital that we get the first goal in this game? And if so, how are we going to do it?
Of course, I'm going to say yes, because it's something that we've done so irregularly this year, getting that first goal. And to your point, it's because it takes him out of that survival mentality, because for all these years, it was something where, yeah, if you are in that spot, you are just doing damage control. And I don't know if he's properly beaten that thought process out of his own head yet, because it's just, you'll see them not even give up a goal, but give up like a good opportunity, and he just turtle reverting into the shell. It's nope, nope. You're not gonna get me. Battening down the hatches. We'll deal with them next week. And yeah, that's not something that people are expecting from a top four team, even with people up there that are kind of known for that. Antonio Conte. The yeah, I wish it was different, but it's just not.
So if we assume that, maybe he'll actually have nerves at the start. Maybe he will start out defensively because it's Liverpool, and we saw the last game against Everton. Do we have the tools up front, the healthy tools up front, to undo a defensive performance from Newcastle? Because they can be quite solid defensively, whatever about their attack. But do we currently have the players that can unlock that particular door?
Yeah, and I think it's more of, in this one, I think it's going to be about that overlap that we were getting in the Everton game, where if you can get Robbo and Trent running at those Newcastle fullbacks, yeah, Trippier's. There's a reason that he was getting picked in the England side over Trent, because of his defensive prowess, so to speak. And it's a guy that has no problem staying at home. So if Robertson is able to kind of pull him in between having to choose to go after Nunez or defend across, and kind of get his head in two places at once, that's going to throw off a guy that is willing to stay at home, especially if Eddie, like you said, Eddie Howe is going to come out defensively. You have to kind of just pull if they're steadfast, we're going to come out and be a back line like that and not give any ground on that front. You have to kind of change what their ground is. And I'm not sure and this goes back to our hope when we're talking on the last point of, if they can run the same thing that they were doing, I think they will be able to make him change that ground. But if they kind of just go like they've done the past few times that they've teased us with the 4-2-2 or the 4-4-2 or whatever that Klopp wanted to classify it as on a given week, if it's just like, okay, that was cool for against Everton, now 4-3-3, same old, nice, then this whole conversation's mood.
Just that's a late good evening to Alan and there. But so let's move back a line into like it almost seems that for me anyway, it seems like we probably should stick with what we had up front: Nunez, Gakpo, and Salah, and let them do what they did against Everton. But how do we do the midfield three? Do we stick with what we had against Everton as well, or do we rotate Bajatic out, or do we rotate Henderson out because of his age, or do we put Keita in somewhere? What do you think about that situation?
Yeah, it's. I think the only place where you would have any sort of rotation would probably be Keita for Henderson, because they have that kind of same hair trigger with their passes where they just want to just get it and go. Whereas I think if we brought in Thiago for this one, it would kind of ruin the dynamic. Whereas I think against Real Madrid, looking ahead, he would be more suited to come back for that one, just because his Champions League experience, his experience against Madrid in multiple instances, I think would be very helpful on that front. So if Hendo's healthy to give you at least an hour, I say same three. But if you are in a spot where you need to rest him and kind of have him come in as a closer rather than a starter, I'd say Kate is probably the guy that comes in for him.
I think Brian, I think probably agrees with you, at least for starting the same midfield, and I would be of the same mind. But let's jump ahead then to the match after that. I think it's Real Madrid. So as we touched on it there, do we change our approach to Real Madrid? Because it looks to me like they're not having a great domestic season and maybe a bit iffy continentally. Do you think that, we could actually go and gegenpress this particular Real Madrid team and finally get that win over them that we've wanted 2 previous times? Or are they still a danger and we have to be a little bit more conservative?
Yeah, for all of their woes this year, they're still Real Madrid in the Champions League. And I was listening to the radio this morning, and they're going, "What is this, a Madrid team that can go all the way?" Last year, they were a team that was supposed to get knocked out every single round from the round of 16 on. It was like, "Yep, okay, it's been a good run. You guys did great with what you had." And then the next round, hey, you should be happy that you got this far. Have fun. See you next year. Okay, all right. It's the semifinals. This is just a great story. You guys, pat on the back. Have yourself a nice evening in Paris, Manchester. Each round that they come through, like, yeah, just make sure you go eat well in the city, and then fuck off. And then the final. Okay, all right. So they're here, but yeah, there's no way that they can kind of run with Liverpool and then what happened. It's a team that will always scare me under the Champions League lights, no matter how crummy they've been domestically.
Well, Brian says that they're as injured as us, but that's clearly a lie because nobody is injured as us this season. No. But
King of the infirmary.
In terms of I mean, they are still Real Madrid, and there's the Champions League brings out the best of teams a lot of the time, especially teams that are under the cosh elsewhere. It's almost like an oasis of calm for teams. But as Brian says, they're almost in a similar boat to us. Let me throw caution to the wind and tempt the fates and say, given the respective badness of both of our seasons, is it possible the eventual winner comes out with this game?
With the way this season has gone, it just smells like the run is coming from either of these two teams. There's so many teams that are playing great domestic football who are just almost due to slip on a banana peel in the Champions League, because you're like, oh, Dortmund is just winning games for fun, and then they beat Chelsea, but they are also a team that, when things have come to shove in Europe, has just shat themselves over recent times, and I just expect the same until I'm proven wrong.
Let me paint a poetic picture then. Let's say we squeak through a nice, tense, narrow 3-2 two-leg victory over Real Madrid. I don't know how the rounds go, but we meet Manchester City in the final. Wouldn't it just be absolutely beautiful to beat them in the final, even if they win the league? Would you take them winning the league for us to win the Champions League? Or are you like me, you just don't want Man City to win anything ever again?
Yeah, I'm of the mind where the less they win, the better. But I kind of would be okay with that trade. especially if we beat them in the final. Just that, because just like PSG, the only reason that this blank checkbook has been bestowed upon Pep Guardiola and his people is they want to just win the Champions League. That's it. That's all they've wanted. All of these leagues, all of these domestic cups do not mean fuck all to this ownership group. They want to win the Champions League above all else, and the fact that they haven't at this point just sticks in their cross so mightily. And the fact if that was the final hurdle and they're like, oh, this is a down year Liverpool team. We've mopped the floor with them a couple times. This is going to be no problem. And if they lost in that instance, oh god, that would be the chefiest of kisses in the world.
So let me add the cherry on top of that dessert then. So we faced Man City in the final. We beat Man City in the final. Man City get relegated for all of their nonsense, financial nonsense, and Pep Guardiola goes to PSG, where he fails to win the Champions League ever again before he retires, and gets to watch us get to number 10 over the next 7 years or so. It would be a beautiful thing. So before we go, we have to have our typical and usual for whom the bell tolls the threshold question. It's the fourth topic of the night. Here's the threshold question for this week, Trevor. It's a tough one, I think. You have to remove one player from history, the entire history of Liverpool. You have to choose one player, and they never played for us. And whatever way that ended up influencing trophies is what ends up being the case. Graham Souness or Steven Gerrard, who do you get rid of?
So Souness is before my time. So the immediate knee-jerk reaction is to get rid of him. But if you look into the history at all, you know about just everything that he meant to the club and the things that he did for a lot of those teams that won a lot of shit. So
he even knocked a player out in a European Cup game.
His resume is both checkered and storied in the same breath. But in the other hand, like Gerrard gave me so many fond memories, but he also gave me LA Galaxy. He also gave me going to Rangers. There's been so much that he's done post Liverpool that has kind of just put a lot of stink on Stevie G. So no matter how many old man yelling at cloud things he said on the radio, I gotta keep Souness around, and Stevie, as much as it pains me, you got Thanos snap, brother. I'm sorry. It's just the way. Yeah.
Brian agrees with you there. I think for me it would be we keep Souness as well, simply because I don't believe we win 81 or 84 European Cups without him. I think he was like a masterful on-field leader, dreadful manager, but masterful on-field leader. But also he gave us Robbie Fowler, and that's a major plus in the positive column for anybody. So for me, also it's Suey gets to stay. Stevie G gets to hit the bricks. Coffee is for closers. But that's our show for tonight. Stick around, all you happy Liverpool fans, especially if you're fantasy football supporters and good at it, unlike me, who's absolutely dreadful. Because
I've been slipping down the standings the past couple of weeks. These doubles have killed me.
I think they've just eliminated me from the standings at this point. It's just too pathetic. But
you got a race like Stevie did. He just took you out of the league entirely. It's like he never played.
I am the Roy Hodgson of Fantasy Football League.
Oh.
But if you're into that, if you're good at it, stick around for Gali and Tamouche. They'll have their or Matthews, pardon me, I always get that name mixed up. They will have the show. Alan says grain for him as well. It's just
sweet.
He had the moustache and he had the perm. But yeah, for us, if you're on Discord, keep interacting with us. If you're not on Discord, then get on the Discord. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and Spotify. And make sure you watch the morning coffee. I think it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday still. Yep. And then there may or may not be a post and pre-match show for the game on Saturday, but keep an eye out for that. And the best way to do that is to subscribe. Yeah, it just gets better and better and better. But it just remains for me. Easier. Yeah, life is so much easier when you hit the bell, or not the bottle, as we have done sometimes this year. But just right to say, Trevor, thank you so much for being here. Thank you everybody for interacting and watching. We will see everybody next Thursday. Usual bat time, usual bat channel. Enjoy the weekend, and peace out.